Russell, I'm so excited to speak with you this morning. And, so let's start at the beginning. First, did you always know you were going to be an attorney? And the reason I ask is because I read somewhere that you were the first of your family to attend law school.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I always knew I would be an attorney. I think there were seeds planted by my family members over time. But, we come from kind of a blue collar family. I was the first to go to college in my family for a 4-year university. So when I grew up, I was born in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, the western part of Wisconsin, but I spent most of my life on the eastern part of Wisconsin, Green Bay Packers, that
Oh, yeah.
real blue collar city. It's a little different now. I was actually over there Tuesday for depositions. And it's still got that. I love it over there, but it's a tourism industry now with the Packers, so it's a little different. But when I grew up over there, my mom was a nurse, and my dad worked at UPS almost his entire life. And she, I think, had high hopes for all of us kids. And I remember I had to be in grade school. She took me to a lawyer's office downtown Green Bay. And this is like, we're kind of out in the sticks a bit. So this is real fancy. And we sit in this law office, and it's got like the mahogany wood and books and the lawyers, I don't even remember what they said. All I remember is we ate like one of those cookies that's shaped like a pizza. And I'm sure they talked to us. It was probably some lawyer marketing or outreach for the community, right? So my mom brought me down. That's my first like interaction or even knowledge or anything about being a lawyer. So maybe it started back then,
Playing that nostalgia, the giant chocolate chip cookie every time you go to the law office.
Yeah.
That
So but the one thing about it, I don't even remember the attorneys. They might still have an office down there. But I do remember being impressed by just the way the office looked and felt. That I do recall that. But the problem that I had, and it's self-inflicted, is I was not a studious child. When I was younger, I did pretty well in school, but I got to high school and, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't really focused on school. I was focused on having a girlfriend, doing what I wanted to, just whatever. And my plan was to join the Army, and my grades weren't very good. And my grandfather was a Korean War vet. And so he had told me stories, and we had kind of a history through his side of the family, going back to like the Civil War, being in the Army, armed forces. And I thought, this is what I'll do. And I think, I was a little bit of a troublemaker. So I think also I'd been threatened to be put in military school or something. I wasn't a terrible kid, but I just didn't, my direction in life was not where it needed to be. And so eventually what happened was I was with the Army. They're getting ready. The recruiting guys are saying, hey, you know what? They're taking you out to McDonald's. They're getting everything ready. You're going to graduate. Yep. And my mom goes, can you just do me a favor and take the ACT for me? And I said, sure, Mom. And I said, but I don't even know where I'd go to college. She said, we got to pick one. And there's a little college in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. It's kind of central Wisconsin. And the only reason I picked it was because one of my teachers in high school would tell us stories about playing foosball and hanging out with his friends there, right? So what the heck? I picked that. Do the ACT. Forget about it. I'm going to go to the Army. I'm pretty excited about that. And I remember, and this is probably the start of where I am today, is I remember telling the recruiters, hey, I want to be in the Army because I want to see what I got to see what I'm made of. I want to push myself and find out what I can do. And I've not been doing a good job of that. And they're like, yep, we want you. And so, they would have, whether or not I said that, I'm sure they would want me. But in any event, I got my results back and I got into this school, Stevens Point. And so now I'm stuck here. Okay, well, I want to go to the Army, but my mom really wants me to go to college. So I reach out to my grandfather, who's a Korean War vet, just a really kind of an old soul type guy. And he goes, what, you got into college? You're going to college. And he's like, and I think he may have barely had a high school education, maybe an 8th grade education. Most of my family members, and a lot of them turned out to do great things. But if you go back there, rural Eau Claire, rural northern Wisconsin, and that's, not a lot of educational background. Now, some of my aunts and uncles later went to college and things like that too. But so he was super excited, and I said, all right, I'm going to college. And I told the recruiters that they were not happy with me, but I trusted my grandpa. He had fought. He was a veteran. He was a smart guy. He cared about us as kids. So, and I went to Stevens Point, and it kind of happenstance, a few things. One of my cousins ended up going there too. So I roomed with him, and then something just clicked. I was like, all right, I'm here. I got to earn my keep. I got to do what I'm supposed to do. So that started me in college.
That's amazing. And your life could have been so much different, right? If you just never went and took that ACT. And I like that you had the support of your family, and they really pushed you. And of course, you never want to let your family down. And I think that's an incredible story. And, jumping ahead, so you go to law school, you become a lawyer, and then, shortly after you're first in again, you're hanging your shingle in 2007, you launched Nicolet Law. What were those early days like? What was the trigger then to make that move to hang your shingle?
Well, some of the things started when I was in college. I joined this legal society, and there was an attorney that volunteered through Stevens Point and did low, kind of like, I think it was $5 or $10, and you could get a consultation and advice. She might even represent you. And she really helped out a lot of students. And so I got involved, and this is kind of my early days of marketing. I was just telling somebody this the other day. Now, remembering this, I was out hanging up like posters in the commons areas, like we have, and I remember, just like these little cartoons, like we have legal services, $5. And so I made her probably busier than she wanted to be. But that was an experience with an attorney where I saw someone just wanting to help. I mean, she got hardly anything from the school. The $5 was nothing, it was just, she wanted to help people out. She wanted to use her law degree to help the community. And I think that made me really think, like, this is a good profession. She can help people, make a difference, and just be part of the community. And so when I got to law school, I'm like, I finally made it. I'm in law school. This is great. And a lot of the alumni were coming back, the early alumni, just graduated, just got their first job. And they're telling us these stories about working at these big firms. And no offense to people that work at big firms, but it sounded terrible. And I'm like, I think I got in the wrong, I'm doing the wrong thing. This is not what I don't want to work. And I'm downtown Minneapolis because I went to school in the cities. I'm like, I can't do that. I just can't do that. And so my first semester, I can still recall walking up to the front of the William Mitchell Law School and thinking to myself, I think next semester I'm out of this place, man. I gotta recalibrate. I gotta think about this. And so what happened towards the end of that year, I ran into, through a family friend, a solo practitioner, trial attorney in Hudson, Wisconsin, and she needed a law clerk. She had a backload of personal injury cases. She had a lot of family law, and I got that job. And that transformed my thought of the legal field, being a lawyer, working in the community. It was kind of back to the original attorney that I met at Stevens Point. She had that same thing. She had an office, and people knew her in the community. Her clients knew her personally. And I was impressed how she ran a business, and I was impressed how she handled cases.
That's incredible, and always putting the consumer first. And I'm sure that's what drew you to personal injury. And I read when you launched your firm, you launched with a laptop, a printer, a scanner, and a telephone. So you took those experiences where she was a great, she represented herself well in the community and did well for her consumers, and you decided to launch your own. How did you go about getting those first clients? Were you out hanging, signs out in the neighborhood? Were you like, what was it like to kind of bootstrap and get the pipeline growing?
Yeah, just about. I mean, I picked up a few things from her. When I left her office right before I took the bar exam, because I decided I had all my chips in and I needed to pass this bar exam. So I took off, I think, a month or two before the bar exam and went all in, just like a job. I would get up and just study. And I had actually been clerking as like an internship for a judge. And I told the clerk there, I said, my goal is I'm going to get licensed in Wisconsin, and I'm going to get licensed in Minnesota, because then I'm going to have enough work in both states. And she's like, well, you know, that's kind of a tough thing, you know, to get your hopes up because you got to score high enough. And I said, that's my goal. I'm doing it. I'm going out on my own. And then I think between the two states, I'll have enough work to start. And so that was my plan going in. And I did it. You know, I was able to, I passed the bar in Wisconsin and my score was high enough that I was able to wave in into Minnesota. And so then I was living in Minnesota still, because right now, as I talk today, I'm in Hudson, Wisconsin on the border, right on the river. St. Croix River divides the two. And back then, because of law school, I was living on the other side in Minnesota. So I had a little apartment over there and at that time, I was married by then with my wife. I didn't have an office. I had the laptop. I bought a Dell laptop for like $500. I bought a Fujitsu scanner that I'd done all this research on, you know, because it was a huge purchase. It was about $500 as well. And then I think a laser jet printer, which was a big expense. So I was like $1,500 in, man. That was about it right then.
Yeah. And, you know, your story's quite a bit different because most people, they'll start in their local city. They're kind of, you know, own their territory there. And then they kind of expand out. But you're like, hey, I'm going after Minnesota and Wisconsin. I'm gonna have multiple offices and really expand, you know. So you said, you know, like, hey, I learned PPC, I learned payroll, human resources. You know, what were some of those early hires like to take off some of those hats to really take it to the next level?
Well, I think the first thing what happened is, so when I took the bar exam and I didn't know that I passed. You wait, everybody waits in anticipation. You hope to hell you pass. But I said, you know, what am I going to do right now? I think I got a temporary job grading tests somewhere. And it was just like, I couldn't do it because the whole time you got this thing hanging over your shoulder, right? Like, and so I went there and I'm like, you know what? I think I just got to go all in. So I created my own website during, you know, back then you buy a template online. We're talking 2007. Started learning pay-per-click, and I put together this website. I didn't put it live because I'm not an attorney yet, so I can't do that, but I get it already staged. And then as soon as I got that letter and I was sworn in, I put that thing live, and traffic eventually started coming in. Now that was not where we're at today. The internet competition was nowhere near. You know, I think pay-per-click was like 5 cents a click, right? So I could experiment and be wrong, and it didn't cost a lot. Now back then, you know, $50 was a lot of money for advertising for, you know, trying one medium or another. But what I did to answer your question is I had a cousin who lived in Eau Claire, a good friend of mine, almost like a brother to me. And I said, hey, I am a lawyer now. You know, I think you would be an excellent person to help me out. Just that you like to help people. You've got that kind of that brain that just likes strategy. And I said, what do you think about going to the technical college down there and getting like a paralegal degree? He's like, that sounds awesome to me. And I'm like, I can't pay you a lot, so I'm just gonna have to pay you like contract. Like you know, if you work 10 hours for me, send me the bill for 10 hours. And he's just like, that sounds good to me. And he's probably living at his mom, you know, his mom's house at that time. And I couldn't afford legal research. So because of my time in working for the judge, I knew there was a law library in Washington County, which is, you know, 10 minutes. The Washington County Courthouse was 10 minutes from where I lived. So I would drive up to the law library and do Westlaw, all this stuff for free. I spent so much time in there. And then so I started, you know, teaching him how to do that. He had learned some of this in his paralegal program. And so he was kind of helping me, like, I'd say, hey man, I got this new case, you know, maybe it was a criminal case. I got to figure this out. When you draft a memorandum, I need your help. And then he'd do it, send me the bill. And that's how I started shifting some of the weight off of me in doing that kind of first hire. But I mean, it wasn't officially in hire because one, cousin, and two is like a independent contractor. But that was the start. That was the first employee. He's still here today. Now he's a real employee, but we're talking, you know, that's 2007. He's been with me now 14 years. So
Incredible. And I imagine that, you know, the why, first of all, when you start a law firm, you start a business, you're willing to take a lot of cases probably back then that you wouldn't take today, right? You said criminal, you said probably everything came to the door. You're like, hey, we got to make revenue, you know, so where did you reinvest and kind of where did the hill you start to come on the other side and you start to develop that consistent pipeline? Was it still PPC, TV, SEO? What was kind of the big change?
So back then I had my website, I was still running it, and I was doing kind of what we do now. And I was just thinking about this morning. I had the right idea back then. I just didn't know exactly how to do it. I was building content, but a lot of it, because I didn't have the time to draft all of the content myself, you could buy content from like, I think it was Nolo or some other places. And we found out later that Google penalized you for acting stupid, but I didn't know that, so I was trying to make my website this resource, semi-truck accidents, car, everything that I did. I didn't have to worry so much about family law and criminal law, because as long as you said you did it, the cases were kind of coming in. I had that website presence, and the cases would just come in between the website and the pay-per-click was generating a pretty fairly, strong stream of work. And then what kind of worked for me, and I didn't plan on this, was because I'm down in the cities area. My main office at this point is in Hudson. Back in 2007, I'm still kind of got this thing that I'm doing over in Woodbury, but because I'm in Wisconsin, and Hudson's considered part of like the metro for the cities, a lot of the folks that lived in the cities would have these cabins in northern Wisconsin, right? So they would look for an attorney. They'd have land disputes, issues up there, and then I would get hired down here to go up there and represent them. And they were usually fairly well-to-do, doctors, other business professionals. And so I started getting into the civil litigation up in the Northwoods real estate. And that helped out a ton to kind of get going. And that was the pay-per-click, the website, that really worked well for me to get the client pipeline going.
That's amazing. Yeah. And taking those opportunities and making that leap. And, you talked about your mother wanted you to go to law school. You talked about your grandparent wanted you to go to college. What's like a proudest moment? You're like, hey, this is all real. Like I'm running a legit business. Like there's this proudest moment that come to mind that maybe you had this experience that stands out?
Yeah, I think there's been a series of things. It's hard because as you realize in business, sometimes there's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And part of my personality has been a risk taker and always trying to get bigger and grow. And originally I didn't plan it that way. I actually was doing, like you pointed out, general practice. And in Hudson, I ran into an entrepreneur who now runs a really successful business. And back then I was answering my own phones. I'm doing everything, right? And so he calls me up and he says, hey, I need someone to help me with my business. And it's your lucky day because I called this larger law firm and they transferred me to partner and he didn't want to deal with me. And I said, all right. I said, let's meet. And so it turned out he had all this work, this growing business. And he asked me one time, hey, what's your plan? Like, what is the end plan? You're going to have more offices. You're going to have, and I'm like, I guess I don't know right now. Right. I just don't know. My plan was to make a living. I really wanted to help people. I really love the practice of law. I had quite a bit of courtroom experience because I was doing general practice. So I'd be thrown in family law, criminal law, and I was in and out all the time. And because I took any case that came in, I had certain criteria, but if the person was a good person and they said they're going to pay me, sometimes they didn't. I didn't even take a retainer. They'd say they paid me. And they'd say, hey, I got court tomorrow. I do it. I tried a non-compete case, I think 2 weeks out from the trial. I told the guy to call a more seasoned attorney. That attorney wouldn't take it. So he called me back and said, I need you to try this case. I said, we're going to have to put together a retainer that says, I don't think I can even win. I've done no discovery, but I'll go there and I'll fight for you and do everything. He said, okay, so jumped into a trial. So, that stuff those are a lot of proud moments of like that. I think getting clients and then helping them, that made me feel like I made it. Like I'm doing, circling back to what the attorney that I met in college and then the attorney that I worked for in law school, I felt now I'm a real attorney. I'm helping people. I'm making a living, because there was a point where I really wasn't making a living. And I do remember sitting down at the river one morning going, am I just going to wake up every morning and work and not make money and didn't hope for the best? But eventually all that just working hard, answering the phone, doing pay-per-click. I mean, staying up. When I get back from work, doing content, doing pay-per-click, and finally, I don't know if it was about a year in, the needle started to move, right? And now I'm getting a paycheck. And I remember telling one of my friends when I saw him at a wedding, hey man, I'm making X amount now. And he's like, oh, that's excellent. And it wasn't a whole lot of money, but I'm like I made that myself. I bootstrapped the office together. I'm getting a paycheck. I can actually contribute to the household now, right? Because my wife's been floating me. And she wasn't making a lot of money. She worked for Wells Fargo. It was her first job. I mean, she basically got into Wells Fargo as like an admin assistant, even though she had a college degree, through like a friend of a friend, right? So we were living on a pretty tight income. And so, like, to answer your question, when I finally started paying myself, I'm like, man, I made it. Like, this is what I'm an attorney. I'm helping people. I'm winning some, I'm losing some, but I'm helping people. They like work with me, and I get paid. So, at that point, hey, and I'm working with my cousin. I got it made.
That's an incredible story, and things have changed, right? You have multiple offices in Minnesota, you have multiple offices in Wisconsin, and now, I'm kind of pivoting it over. Now you've decided, hey, I've got the firm, we're growing. Now you have Nicolet Creative, and you have Nicolet Tech. So tell me a little bit about how those were born, starting with Nicolet Creative.
Well, and I'll just circle one thing too, is just like, so my cousin works for me, and he still, worked for me, he still does. And what I did then is to kind of get to this growth, and it'll get to the other businesses, is that basically my brother went to the Army. Unlike me, he got injured, and he was in Madison. He left school early to go to the Army, and we convinced him to come back, finish his degree, and then come and go to law school and work. And so I started bringing in my family members, and that's how we grew and grew. And even though, like I told him the other day, we wouldn't have enough work, I'm like, we're going to get you enough work. Like, I want you to work here. So he works here, my one brother, then eventually my other brother, now my sister. My mom actually even works here now. She's a registered nurse, and now she evaluates cases. So I decided, like, it was almost out of necessity. I got to build these offices because I want them all to work with me. And then in turn, they helped me build the office, because I had these people that were really reliable. They were hardworking. And not only did they want the business to succeed as employees, but they wanted it to succeed, being my sibling, or, my mom. So that helped, and that kind of fostered this entrepreneurial spirit that I had, that was like, man, I've got like all these ideas, and I've always had that as far as I can remember, like kind of like explosion of ideas in my head, right? And one of the guys, he was an early client of mine, who now was my employee on the tech side. He basically came to me, and we did a little bit of bartering, because I had been working for him, and he goes, hey, I work for a tech company, and you could really use some IT, because I'm starting to grow. And I'm like, yeah, well, I got an IT guy, and no offense to this guy if he ever hears it, but he wasn't doing a real good job. And I said, do you want to work out a deal? I'll do legal services for you. You do IT. He's like, deal. And so we started that, and probably one of the smartest guys I know, no college degree or anything, just worked his way up through apprenticing with his dad to become like just this genius IT guy. And he was working for larger firms. He was doing veterinarian hospitals, all kinds of stuff. And I told him, if you and your dad ever, like, you decide, hey, my dad's he's getting old, he doesn't want to do it, and you want some help running that business, or you want to start a new business, call me. Because I like IT. I did IT as a job in college. I worked IT for the university, and I'm like, and I need, like, have these ideas to start a new business. And so eventually he comes to me and says, hey, do you still want to do an IT business? And I'm like, sure. And he's like, I don't want to run it. I want to start working it. And that started Nicolet Tech. And now we're doing IT for, veterinarians. We do IT for the Nicolet Law. But it's an awesome job, because it's this other area besides being a legal professional. Now we're helping businesses, and so it's that helping and just taking care of these issues. And then I know when Ryan goes there, he's going to fix these problems, and he's going to come into a situation where people are like, man, my IT guy said he can't do it, or this or that, and he just hammers it out. And they're so relieved, because when you're running a small business, you're dependent now on IT. And so that started Nicolet Tech. It's been growing, and we've started doing some work with your office, your company, But really that started off as a lot of word of mouth. Just, it's the same thing, you know, hey, who's your IT guy? Well, I got this IT guy who saved my butt the other night. Well, can you give me his number? All right. And so now we've got a handful of veterinarian hospitals, probably more than that. We've got a large manufacturing plant in St. Paul we work for. And then keeping with the family thing, my sister helps out on that, but we brought in Ryan's son and we're going to apprentice him up. Now he's going to school too, but now he's working. Ryan's teaching him the ropes, and it just is awesome. It just, Ryan is a great guy. He's one of the best employees you can have, one of the best IT guys I've ever met. His son is just like him. And so we're training his son up, and it's just like, it's a beautiful thing, man.
That's incredible. And that's quite a bit different than most business owners. Most business owners are like, no, I'm not going to work with any family. I don't want to mix family and work. And you've made the dynamic not only work, but it's amazing what you've been able to do. It's really helped you become that entrepreneur, and you have these people you can depend upon. And I guess also, does it force you the mindset like, hey, I got to grow because I now have, you know, this family to support, and we have to keep growing. You know, I've heard people say, you know, you grow or die. And so you just keep growing. Is it kind of forced that mindset of growth too?
It does. I feel the weight of a lot of these folks now. They count on, you know, the decisions I make. And like a lot of businesses, 2020 was a little rough. I got pretty bullish in 2019, which then this is on the law office end. I had a bankruptcy practice going here that had been doing pretty well. I had started that at one time, and I had done some complicated bankruptcy trials. So I felt like we could be one of the best bankruptcy firms, because not only can we handle the run-of-the-mill bankruptcy, but I'll try the bankruptcy against these creditors. You know, I've been successful in one against banks, and I noticed that in that bankruptcy space, it was kind of like, hey, we'll do the run-of-the-mill bankruptcy for X amount. If you get more trouble, that's your problem. And on our end, I always thought we're going to do this kind of a volume, but when the price you pay is when some of these complicated one comes in, someone needs help, then we're going to litigate, and they don't have the money to litigate. So, you know, we'll make a deal. You're litigating a case that usually would be maybe $30,000 to $50,000 in attorney fees, and you know, maybe we'll do it for $5,000, because that was the price that we need to pay to make sure that the trustees, the creditors know we mean business. But then also, that's just when you're doing that, handling that many bankruptcies, you got to be prepared to help everybody, and some of them are going to be complicated. And so I thought I created this bankruptcy blueprint, and I hired. And so I had been doing some bankruptcy, same with my brothers, but we were still doing the injury work, right? So we hired all these folks to just do the bankruptcy process. And, you know, the attorneys, that's all they did. Staff, that's all they did. And surprisingly, bankruptcies went down, at least what we saw during the pandemic. And what I realized too is if we wanted to be an injury law firm, we were kind of diluting our message. And it was a lot of sleepless nights originally creating the bankruptcy division, but then eventually it kind of got to the point where like we needed to get rid of it. So we had a pretty big thing going. I eventually parted ways with that whole division in 2020, beginning of 2021. And that was a little bit like I was talking about, that couple steps forward, a few steps back. And it made me reevaluate, okay, I got to be careful with what we're doing here, because some of these decisions, like I'm okay taking the risk, but I got to be careful if I'm going to let go of one. Anytime you got to let go of somebody, it's terrible, right?
Yeah.
But I've got all these family members, and then I've got lifelong employees whose families depend on us. And so then we kind of decided, hey, we're going to focus in on injury law. We really like it. And we're going to build up the practice with this little bit tighter foundation rather than spreading out like we were, because of that, because we know, I mean, they've got to be paid. They've got to have steady income, and they've just got to know job security. I mean, as you know, one thing getting a paycheck and you're paying your bills, getting groceries, but it's another thing when you get home at night and you're just not, even if you're getting a paycheck, you're just not sure what your employment future is, right? I mean, that weighs on a person. And so my goal has been in 2021 is to make sure that we are thinking 5-10 years ahead, right? So now that's where I'm focusing, so that the folks that have chosen to work here, and many of them that have worked over 5 years, 7 years, some even over a decade, they can rest assured, like, we've got a plan, and then we're going to stick to that plan, and that they can feel good about their career and their stability for their family. So, but
Yeah, and
heavy.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question here, and this is kind of self-serving. When you, on a different end, when you see someone maybe that's not performing, right, and you have to terminate those individuals, and I'm the same way. Geez, there's nothing worse when you have to let somebody go, and you end up, say, letting go a few people. Like, what's the balancing act? Because I'm like, hey, I fired 3 people consecutively. I'm going to just put the fear in everyone else. And, if they're all fearful, maybe they're not working at their maximum capacity. Maybe they'll start looking for another job because of their security. So what's like that balancing act, and how do you communicate that message to the rest of the organization?
Well, and that we did let go quite a few people, and that was delicate, because the question was, I think, on most employees' minds, am I next on the list? Am I gone? Right? And originally, it was unknown exactly how far, because we knew the bankruptcy division is going to go, but then that starts to go into intake and other general staff. And my brothers helped a bit with that too. We kind of started to think about what employees do we need now, and what could we potentially keep, even though they weren't necessarily bankruptcy, they were more in the support staff, but assuming we can get busy in the injury space, that we can keep them because they're great employees, and can we do that? And so that was the balancing act of, okay, we know we got to get rid of bankruptcy, and the folks that want to just do bankruptcy, that's all they're going to do, and that's all they can do. Not that they couldn't do something better, but that's really what they're focused on and what they want to do. We know that's got to go. But now the other thing is these other individuals. And I think what we came down to is we looked at who's working hard here, that even though they maybe were more needed with the bankruptcy practice, they will be needed. And they're just so valuable and talented. We need to keep them regardless. And so that's what we tried to do. And then to answer your question, I got a little bit, and I don't know if the lucky is the word or fortunate, but some individuals also left at that time or shortly after themselves, maybe concerned for just what you said. And it made some decisions that I would have had to make myself much easier. And it's hard to know now, would I have picked some of them to leave? But what it did turn out for us is that the individuals that did stay, I think are, and I no offense to the people that left, with great employees, but we do have some of the best employees. And I'm not just saying from our group of employees, but if you looked at in this area, legal professionals as a whole, I think we ended up with a lot of people that are good employees. And then individuals that are like the loyalty that they have to the office. I mean, if there's any kind of litmus test, right, they pass that. So I feel like the people that are here now, like, I got to go to war for them every day, because they hung in here when things got tough. They're super loyal, and they are the most talented, and I don't want to lose any of them. And so that helped me make the decisions, but I also don't ever have to feel like put the fear in them. I think what I found out now, and what I've been working on, is I got to work on our culture to get back to my original focus, which was helping. Like, and I've heard another attorney, I don't know if you know Andrew Finkelstein, it's that caring, and I've always thought that's really important. And so I really want to build that concept. And I know we all believe this, but we need to really get this. I need to portray this better to the firm, and we're working on it, is that caring and care for each other, we care for our clients, and we care for the community, and just build it up that way. Because rather than operate on the fear, I want people to operate on that. I love this job, and I think a lot of people already do this, but I want to make sure they know that this is why you're here. It's not because I'm going to fire you because I think you may be kind of slacking a bit. I want people to come in every day excited that what they do here makes a difference for people. They help people. This is a noble, historic profession. And on top of it, like, all your coworkers, when you come in, and I think most everybody can say this, we feel like friends. Some of us are family, obviously, but we feel like friends. So when you come in, this is your group, man. Now, I know people would rather be maybe on vacation or hanging out with their kids or doing this, but if they've got to work, which most of us do, when they come here, this is a place they want to be. And so I'm working on the culture, and we're working on creating a situation where it's not necessarily there's room for moving up position wise because we're not that big yet, but there's room for better benefits for each person, better pay, like so they can see this is going to be the future for them. This is going to provide the groceries, the gas, everything for them and their family. And so that's like where I'm at now. And I'm hoping, rather than the fear aspect, it's just that we love being here. We want to contribute. We love the clients. We love each other. And that's why we're just going to work here. And then when people come in to interview and want to see, or people just reach out to me, they're like, man, that's where I want to work. Like, I like that place. Like, my firm's okay, but man, Nicolet Law, look at that. I mean, everybody loves it there. And so that's where I'm focused. And 2020, for whatever, it happens, that's reset it for me. And it was sleepless nights, hard times, family members not at each other's throat, but my brothers and I had some decent arguments. It was rough, but yeah, now I feel like, not that everything happens for a reason, but we're definitely getting better. We are better, and we're going to keep getting better because of what happened.
That's so powerful. That reminds me, I'm not sure if you've read the book, The Hard Things About the Hard Things, that shift. It's a Ben Horowitz book. It's the shift from like a peacetime CEO to a wartime CEO. So you went through this like wartime CEO where you had to make these tough decisions for the betterment of everyone to get the focus back. And then, you got the culture back to where people enjoy, their environment, and it's really powerful. And I applaud you for that. And it's, so on the business book front, are there any business books that like come to mind that really had a big impact on you and your trajectory for growing the firm?
It's hard because over 2020, I read so many books. I decided to invest like in myself and make myself better. One of the problems, and we're talking about the business, is I had hired kind of a coach at one point and got involved, and him along with some other things that I had read were like, you as the president should focus more on running the organization. And I started to think about that, and it got into my head. And then I realized in 2020 that business needs me to do that, but it also needs me to be a trial lawyer, because that's when I'm happy. Like when I'm trying cases, when I'm working cases, when I'm meeting with clients, just sitting in my office, sending out emails and looking at spreadsheets, I'm never going to be happy. I'm not at my best. Is it going to be more stressful balancing both? Yes, but that's what I want to do. And so I wish I could tell you a book offhand, but man, I've read so many books in 2020. I joined trial school in 2020. I met so many great people, a lot that which are your customers. And so one of the things that really made me think about this culture, but I looked at when I started out the office, what made me successful. Now, $50, in advertising was a lot of money. I had one laptop, but what was my focus? It was helping people, and it was using my knowledge of what people are looking for legal services. So then it's been like, okay, I'm going to go back to that. We're going to focus on that helping, focus on why did my cousin come here? He wanted to work with me because he enjoyed working with me. We had a great culture. But then two, I kind of had an idea back then what I needed to do marketing. Now I got to find like the best of the best vendors to do that for me and rely on them based on my original thoughts, but doing it to another level. And so all this stuff, whether it's one book or one podcast or whatever, I don't know if I can say that, but I can say that like a mixture of 2020, like just reading as much as I could, listening to many podcasts. I mean, before we started working with you, I was like, I don't want to say stalking you, but man, I was reading all your stuff, and you had put out podcasts, you had put out blogs, just things like that. I had been doing all of that and starting to come to these decisions of like I said, like, let's find the best people to work with, because I feel like we've got the best team internally. Let's hire the best externally, and then let's go from there. And then we'll reevaluate in a year. And then on top of that, I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to become a better lawyer. I'm going to lead from the front again, because I always believed in that you need to lead from the front. And now I'm back leading from the front. I think when I got pulled this thought of me leading from, behind, just kind of general, some people can do that. That's not my personality. I want to be providing the big revenue for the firm. I want to be the one that's coming back from trial, win or lose, but everybody sees that I'm in there, getting in the trenches. That's what I want to do. And all of this stuff it feels right. The culture's feeling great. And now I'm just trying to figure out the next step of, okay, how do I project safely, but project for us to continue to grow? And so if you have books that you recommend, I'm reading them, man. Just let me know. I'm consuming as much as I can. I just love it. I just have this insatiable appetite right now for knowledge. I got to balance that with my trial schedule and my cases. But man, I just at night, on the weekends, I'm reading, watching podcasts, check out your blogs, everything.
Thank you for that, Russell. And the mindset, that's infectious. I'm getting motivated hearing you say that. So I kind of want to go out on that tone as one final question here. Do you have any advice for fellow personal injury lawyers looking to grow their practice, trying to grow a large, successful practice?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would say is you've got to be true to yourself. So be who you are. Don't try to be somebody else. And then if you're a person, I think of most injury lawyers that are enjoy people, right? A lot of us enjoy dealing with people. We enjoy talking. We enjoy meeting people. Trust your instincts. Like, you're a social person. Get out there. If you don't have the money to do marketing, get out, network, and just do the right thing for your clients, do the right thing for your community, and you're going to build a practice. But at some point, because the personal injury industry and niche is so competitive, if you want to get bigger, you might have to market, and then you got to find the right people. And that's what I found out the hard way, is you need to find the vendors that do the same thing. And I heard this now I'm thinking about it, I heard this on a podcast not too long ago as well. But it's just finding those vendors, those people you work with, that their organization or they are the same as you, because you need to find them. Otherwise, what you find is you're shifting something that you actually have a good gut feeling, you have the right ideas, and you're giving it to the wrong person, and they're going to hurt you. And you're not going to find out until a long time, you have a lot of money, and all of a sudden you realize, man, the last 5 years, if I would have found the right vendor, this would have been going on. I should have just been doing it myself. And so I would just say, trust your gut, make sure you work with people that have the same values, the same drive, the same ideas as you. And look to find other firms that are doing well, see who they're working with. That's what I'd have to say. It's just be careful who you hire, obviously internally, but more importantly for me, I've noticed, is be careful with who you hire externally.
I think that's a great piece of advice that reminds me of like Dan Sullivan, that who, not how. Find your who's of who can take you to that next level. And Russell, it's been amazing speaking with you. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, man.